So, hello, everyone, whoever can hear me. Hello, we're all here. Dr. Esparza's connecting. There's Ms. Mejia, Esther. You look much more alive today, Miss Arlene. No, remember the last meeting we had? Oh my God, you were so ill. But this is of course, Esther, you look always as beautiful and well-groomed and poised as ever. We're still unofficially chatting. This is good. I want to thank all the board members for front-loading it with your questions. This should make it go a little bit faster. Okay, I think it's 6 o'clock, so by my clock. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to El Rancho Unified School District special meeting of the Board of Education, June 15, 2021 at 6 p.m. So let me start now by reading our mission statement. Students will be challenged to become college and career ready and lifelong learners. The El Rancho Unified School District will actively partner with the community as its leading educational institution that provides a technology-rich and innovative learning environment for all students. I'll call to order members of the Board of Education. Carolyn Castillo, Vice President. Present. Ms. Esther Mejia, Clerk. Present. Dr. Joseph Rivera is absent today. Ms. Arlene Perez, Member. Present. Thank you. This is members of the Administrative Cabinet. Dr. Francis Esparza, Superintendent. Present. Ms. Dora Soto Delgado, Director, Student Support Services. Present. Mr. Dean Cochran, Director of Special Ed. Present. Ms. Roberta Gonzalez, Director, Early Learning Program. Present. Mr. Mark Matthews, Interim Director, Human Resources. Present. Ms. Jasmine Chavez Diaz, Director, Secondary Education. Present. Ms. Gisela Castañon, Director, Elementary Education. Present. And Ms. Marian Sorrell, Chief Business Officer. Present. Thank you. All right, let's now move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Ms. Castillo to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, please stand. You won't see me anymore, but you'll hear me. Okay, your hand over
Yes.
your heart. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands, one
nation under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Castillo. Okay, adoption of the agenda. I need a motion, please.
I'd like to add something to the agenda before you adopt.
Oh, yes. Dr. Esparza, yes.
I'd like to add the budget overview for parents to the agenda.
Budget overview for parents. All right. Is this the only item?
This is the only item, yes.
Thank you. All right. I need a motion to adopt the agenda with the item as so mentioned.
Moved as amended.
Thank you, Ms. Mejia. Second?
Second.
I'll second that. All right. I'll take this to a vote. Ms. Castillo?
yes,
Ms. Mejia?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Merino? Yes, for all to adopt the agenda as presented. Item number 4, public comments. These are items on the agenda limited to 3 minutes. Dr. Esparza?
At this time, we have Ms. Christine Saavedra.
Thank you.
Ms. Saavedra. Okay. Next, we have Ms. Rosalia Luevano.
Okay.
Ms. Rosalia Luevano.
Hi, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I still go?
Is this Ms. Saavedra? Yes.
Yes. Hi.
Okay, so
Yes.
we're back to Ms. Saavedra. Hello, Ms. Saavedra.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Sorry. Okay. Thank you so much. I wanted to talk about the goals specifically in the LCAP. Number 2 goal, especially students, parents, and staff will have equitable access to engage. I just wanted to really thank the LCAP team because, like a lot of you, I've been a part of many LCAPs year after year after year. But Ms. Roberta Gonzalez, Jasmine Chavez Diaz, and Ms. Gisela Castañon, they did a really good job at engaging people. I did go to several of the meetings, and they engage students, they engage parents, and also kind of intertwined with that is the communication team that you guys currently have. Oh my goodness. I don't want to bring up bad old stuff, right? I won't bring up old stuff. But the current communication team that you guys have in place is doing a phenomenal job. I see accountability, like finally, like this is what we were asking for as parents and stakeholders. I know that probably Ms. Gonzalez, out of the 3, to me, she seems the shyest, and you don't want your picture on a flyer, but she's willing to do that for like the LCAP flyers, and it shows, you know, like, come on, parents, it's not something out of your grasp, because sometimes it's hard, like, what exactly are they talking about? Like, this is way above my head. So I just want to say thank you, and really to whoever's doing the social media accounts and the videos, you know, keep them coming. As parents, we are watching them. They're great. I just wanted to, you know, high five, or you can hug that person or whatever it is, whoever is doing it. Thank you so much. As far as the other goals, I think the other goals are right in line. I really appreciate for goal 1, the condition of learning, that you're taking advantage of, like the career tech and how we have our school set up to offer different pathways for students, because not every student wants to go to college or university, but there are different things, opportunities for every student that goes to Rancho. So that was just my quick comment. I wanted to say thank you guys so much, and thank you on behalf of the many parents that I talked to for the graduations and promotion ceremonies. Everybody cried, everybody was happy. It was one heck of a year, but you know what? My kudos to everybody that pulled and that was able to pull through. And the cafeteria people, before I sign off, shout out to the cafeteria people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Saavedra. It is so good to hear from the public the acknowledgement of the wonderful work that our staff is doing from someone outside of the board and peers. So we truly appreciate your comments and just keep them coming. Thank you very much. Dr. Esparza?
Okay. Next, I'm going to ask for Ms. Luevano. I'm not sure if she's with us yet. Okay. Next, Ms. Monica Abarca. Ms. Monica Abarca. Okay. Next, we have Ms. Desiree Sotelo. Ms. Desiree Sotelo. Okay, I see Ms. Luevano has connected. Ms. Luevano?
Hi, everybody. Good evening to board members, parents, staff, everyone present. I would like to take this time to thank everybody involved in the LCAP for all their hard work and all their time they put into it. Starting with the superintendent, Dr. Esparza, and everyone who put together all the presentations. I am impressed by the way you conducted this, the LCAP input. I am very appreciative of how you asked every parent by sending all those surveys and asking for our input. I see a shift in our district, and I am very happy that we're going in a different direction. All the voices are being heard, and I appreciate that you are taking the time to take everyone's input into consideration. Thank you for doing that. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I know you have the best interest of the students in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sotelo. I will pretty much say what I said to one of our previous speakers, that we certainly appreciate positive comments from the community in recognizing the hard work that is happening in the district in spite of our challenges. But nonetheless, the staff is focused, and I'm certainly that tonight is probably one of their best nights hearing these good things about all their hard work. Thank you, Ms. again.
Dr. Marino, that was Ms. Luevano, and Ms. Sotelo is not with us yet.
Okay, then I stand corrected. Ms. Luevano is, we had, okay, I see it. Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Esparza. Okay.
And if Ms. Sotelo is with us, Ms. Desiree Sotelo. Okay. There are no other public comments at this time. Some people signed up, but did not respond.
Thank you. All right, let's now move on to information items. 5A, this is a presentation of the Local Control Accountability Plan for the 2021-22 school year. Ms. Gonzalez, Roberta Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. It's our pleasure to be here this evening to present our draft LCAP. It has been a team effort, and in that spirit, we are going to be sharing the presentation of information this evening, and Dr. Esparza is going to start for us. So thank you, Dr. Esparza.
Thank you, Roberta. And if we could get the presentation. Very good. Thank you, thank you. So good evening, board members, community members, and all of the ERUSD staff who are with us this evening. As we see brighter days coming ahead of us in 2021, and we will be opening our schools to all our students and staff next year, we want to ensure that we present how planning for the road to success is key in El Rancho Unified. So the Local Control Accountability Plan, better known as LCAP, is a 3-year plan that describes the goals, actions, services, and expenditures to support positive student outcomes that address state and local priorities. And with that, if you could move to slide number 2. So before we take a look at the LCAP, we want to review the process that has been undertaken during the past few months, which staff here in El Rancho Unified have gone that extra mile to make sure that there are several stakeholders involved. It wasn't just sending out a survey and getting information back. They really did focus on bringing people together and making sure that everyone at every level was heard. So from March through May, staff convened over 20 engagement sessions with specific stakeholders for input in the development of the LCAP. This month, we presented the LCAP to our DAC and DLAC, and we've provided written responses to questions that some of our DAC and DLAC parents have asked. Earlier this month, we submitted our LCAP to the Los Angeles County Office of Education for a preliminary evaluation, and LACO has consultants will be providing feedback based on the following criteria: adherence to the LCAP template and requirements, sufficient expenditures in the budget to implement action in the plan, and adherence to expenditure requirements. Today, we're pleased to provide this opportunity for the public comments and the adoption by the local governing body in conjunction with the budget adoption. And next week's board meeting on June 22nd, we will bring forward a finalized LCAP for your approval. Next slide. So at its core, the LCAP is intended to be a comprehensive planning tool for school districts. Each plan must describe district-wide and school-wide goals, as well as specific actions to be taken to achieve the goals for all students, including specific subgroups of students in each of the 8 state priority areas, plus any locally identified priority areas. So expected progress toward meeting the goals, and as part of our district required annual update of the plan, the district must describe actual progress made toward meeting the goals and describe any adjustments that we would like to make, and expenditures required to implement each of the goals and actions, including a description of how additional funds are provided for low-income students, English learners, and foster youth will be used to increase or improve services for these students. So that is a really big piece of any school district's LCAP. It is those subgroups, the low-income students, English learners, and foster youth. Next slide. So it is extremely important to note that El Rancho Unified's LCAP is based on a template approved by the California State Board of Education, and it has been written specifically to respond to the detailed directions provided by the state. Here you see an example of the template, including specific cells that were populated with information regarding ERUSD's goals, date, and monitoring actions, as well as expenditures. Next slide. So over the course of the past several months, the staff have put together meetings with stakeholders to hear their views, perspectives, suggestions regarding the development of an LCAP. What is that road to success? The staff convened with 20 sessions and gathered approximately 800 parent and staff surveys. To collect that input, Roberta has really led a lot of this, as well as Gisela Castañon, as well as Jasmine Chavez Diaz, Dora Soto Delgado, Dean Cochran, and several others, especially Marianne and Lily Huntenberg when it came down to the budget. So we want to acknowledge that everyone had their hand in this to make sure that we weren't just creating the LCAP within the district without having knowledge from everyone around us and making sure that all stakeholders were heard. Roberta?
Yes, so thank you, Dr. Esparza. One of the things we wanted to do before launching into a discussion of our goals that you see here was to talk a bit about some of the highlights. So here you see we do have our 3 goals, and those 3 goals really are intended to facilitate some systemic changes. In particular, what El Rancho has really looked at in this LCAP process is leveraging all of our resources to support all of our students in grades pre-K to 12. And in particular, El Rancho plans to use resources to invest in additional sort of human resources or supports. And here we're talking about paraeducators, TOSAs, other individuals in classrooms to support students, and to also facilitate the implementation of MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support, to provide the assistance that all students need to be successful. So we anticipate that this additional staffing, coupled with the provision of professional development, teacher planning on articulation, and also enhanced opportunities for small group instruction, will position El Rancho to provide an effective tiered approach to supporting students across the grade span. Now, in addition to providing human resources at school sites, El Rancho will also invest in providing an optimal context for learning. And so to ensure a safe, welcoming environment for students, El Rancho will fund maintenance and operation initiatives to maintain schools in excellent condition. And to equip students and teachers with the tools needed to engage in effective teaching and learning, instructional materials, and including the provision of hands-on learning supplies will be provided for all school sites. Now, in respect to educational technology, which was identified as a priority across stakeholder groups, we will continue to allocate resources for both an annual refresh to our one-to-one device provision, as well as continuing to offer our critical online learning platforms. Now, as a final piece, El Rancho will make a substantial investment in promoting student engagement and nurturing overall student well-being through funding additional mental health and academic counselors. And in an effort to inspire students and create pathways for a successful future in college and career, El Rancho will initiate career exploration programs, pre-K to 12, and also expand CTE offerings, including, we're very excited about an automotive technology pathway. So now, as you see here, we have our 3 goals in their final form. And as indicated here, each goal has a very specific focus. So for goal number 1, we're really looking at conditions of learning very broadly defined. And so here we're giving attention to instruction, the classroom environment, materials, staffing, and the supports that impact learning and students' preparedness for college and career. And so here we go. Here we have our goals. So for goal number 2, that really is addressing engagement, an engagement of students, staff, and families within an inclusive, welcoming school environment that affords all students an opportunity to excel. And then finally, goal 3 refers to our pupil outcomes. And here, pupil outcomes has a very specific focus on students' readiness to participate in sort of society in general beyond high school graduation. And so here we're giving particular attention to those 21st century skills, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication, with a special emphasis on civic engagement. So now we will move on to take a look at goal 1 in a bit more detail. And so if we could have the next slide, I can see we're advancing here. So the next one. And so for what we did in terms
Sorry, Roberta, give me 1 quick second. I'm having a little difficulty with the second presentation.
No worries. So what I can speak to is that for each goal, we met with stakeholders, and stakeholders within those 20 sessions that we convened really helped us identify actions that they believed would help students meet those goals. And so we collected input in terms of potential actions from students, from classified staff, certificated staff, families, and we compiled those together. We then sent those out in survey form to our teachers, our other staff, and to families. And what we did then was collect all of that feedback to identify our top priorities by specific LCAP goal. And so for our first goal, which reads, students will be provided high quality learning experiences, appropriate instructional materials, equitable learning environments, and access to a broad course of study that fosters academic and interpersonal skills in preparation for college and career. And if we could advance to the next slide, I'll be able to share with you, and to our next one, I'll be able to share with you here. Here you're going to see those top 5 actions identified by stakeholders via our surveys. So you'll see here that our stakeholders really identified working with teachers working in small groups with students as a real priority. There was also an emphasis on tutoring, after school programming. You see here the commitment to maintaining that one-to-one device provision for students, And then also teacher and staff training on working effectively with students. So those were the top priorities related to goal number 1. And if we advance to our next slide, what we then proceeded to do was to take that stakeholder input and to craft actions that would support students meeting those goals. And so as you see here, we have on this slide and on our next slide, you're going to see a series of actions that will support students with meeting goal number 1. And so here you will see those actions. The way that they are ordered is simply based on the allocation, with the largest allocation first, then going to our lesser allocation. If we look at the previous slide, you'll see that the recruiting and retention of highly qualified staff is a major priority in El Rancho. And you can see the allocation there of over 25 million. And so that's looking at our staff across the district, our teaching staff. We do also call out maintaining our commitment to class size reduction in grades TK to 3. So what you can think of is the 11.3 million plus the 25 million. That is our overall staffing allocation for grades TK to 12. And that is a major investment in terms of our commitment to our human resources as really one of the key elements to helping students succeed. You'll then see we have a focus on maintaining safe facilities. Now here, one distinction we wanted to make was that, as indicated on the previous slide and in other slides, our stakeholders had a real interest in having optimal learning environments for students in terms of the physical space. Now within the LCAP, the upgrading and building of facilities would not be something addressed within this document. It really would be reserved as a function of some of our bond work and perhaps some of our allocation of our ESSER dollars in the future. However, in recognition of the input that our stakeholders provided, we did want to call out here our commitment to providing safe, well-maintained facilities. And this over $7 million allocation is what we invest in our maintenance and operations department, our staff, and the work that they do on an annual basis. Here you can see our next item, small group instruction for students. And here in particular, you'll see we're making an investment in our paraeducators in grades TK to 3. So investing in those classrooms early on with an additional individual to support the critical instruction that takes place in ELA, in math, so that we can get children off to a positive start and launch them on a trajectory for success in later elementary and secondary school. You'll then see an allocation for content experts or TOSAs. And the concept here is that to support with professional development across the grade span, as well as coaching in secondary classrooms, we would have these real content experts to support the work that we do. The next item you'll see is we will continue the provision of digital learning coaches at an elementary level. The next item here for instructional materials specifically references manipulatives and supplemental supplies. And here that's really defined as the manipulatives that are really needed in the elementary grades to make the conceptual work and math more understandable for young children. So things like Unifix cubes, tangrams, 10 frames, things that you can hold and move around and manipulate to develop deep conceptual understanding. We're also talking about supplemental supplies, for example, in a secondary science classroom, like lab equipment or specimens. And in addition, this line item here does include the significant investment we plan to continue to make on an annual basis to maintain our online learning resources, or those platforms or technology-based resources that have become really integral to the work that teachers have done during distance learning. We want to maintain that. The next item for access to technology is the estimated amount that would be needed on an annual basis to refresh our one-to-one device provision for students. And on the next slide, if we take a look, we have instructional materials in our core content areas. This is an amount of money that we intend to set aside for upcoming textbook adoptions. So this is distinct from the prior item on instructional materials, and that this references core textbooks. And here the expectation is that we will need ELD materials, English materials at a secondary level, as well as NGSS aligned science materials across the grade span. Next, you'll see here tutoring for students, and this is a reference to the after-school supports that we plan to offer for our students outside of the regular school day. You see, we plan to maintain our commitment to our teacher induction program, which has proven so successful. Also, we will maintain our commitment to supporting English learners through continuing to fund our EL resource teacher, who is so critical to the provision of integrated and designated ELD, as well as to our monitoring efforts to make certain that our English learners are making progress. Finally, you'll see here that we will make an investment in staff articulation and collaboration. And here you'll see a $20,000 allocation. What we plan to do is leverage our existing structure where we have Wednesdays as modified days. These dollars would really be for those occasions outside of modified days when teachers need to convene, to plan, to collaborate, to articulate across grade levels. And we would provide substitutes to be able to free them up from their classrooms for that time. And so you'll see here that our investment in goal 1 totals $49,529,853. Next slide, please. So this next slide provides the metrics, delineates the metrics that we will need in order to measure our progress and overall effectiveness. And so these are really steps that are prescribed by our LCAP template. And so what we'll be doing is looking at these metrics to measure how well we are progressing towards meeting goal 1. So you'll see here, we will be looking at our college and career readiness dashboard. We'll be looking at A to G completion rates, AP pass rates, 2 and 4 year college application rates. We'll be looking at our CTE pathway completion, graduation, and dropout rates, as well as monitoring the number of Williams complaints that are submitted annually as a measure of how well we're doing in offering safe, functional learning environments for students. Again, we will be revisiting these on an annual basis, and it will be our mechanism for making certain that as an organization, we're moving forward and doing the best that we can to support our students. I will now pass it to Ms. Jasmine Chavez-Diaz, who is going to be walking us through goal 2.
Good evening, school board members and El Rancho community. So goal 2 really focuses on engagement, not only for our students, but also our families and our staff. And so goal 2 reads, students, parents, and staff will have equitable access to engage socially, emotionally, and academically across all grades and schools in an inclusive and welcoming environment. And so as we post this goal to our stakeholders, this is the feedback that they came back with. These were the top 5 actions that they thought would support this goal. And so you see that the number 1 action that they wanted to see is increase student access to academic counselors at school sites. That was 74%, almost 75% of our participants. They also wanted to have us provide support staff for multi-tiered systems of support through small group instruction and intervention. They wanted us to continue to offer technology support for families. They wanted us to provide professional development to support instruction. And lastly, with 51% of the votes, time for teachers to plan, analyze data, and collaborate. So these were the top 5 actions that our stakeholders wanted to see reflected in goal 2 of the LCAP. And now we took this feedback and incorporated it into our actions. Next slide, please. And so when we look at our actions, our goal aims to ensure that all our stakeholders, students, families, and staff are engaged and able to access a broad range of educational offerings and support. So to achieve this, there are several things. And again, as Ms. Gonzalez pointed out, these are not in order of importance, but in order of the amount of funds that we would be allocating. So the first one you see is we're going to ensure campus safety by providing school security officers and school police officers. Secondly, we're going to support small group instruction for our English learners during the school day. And this will be intervention and small group instruction that will be provided by certificated teachers. Now, the third one, which was number one, if you remember for our stakeholders, is we're going to increase access to academic counselors by providing additional counselors at the secondary level. So for example, right now, if you look at the middle schools, we run at about 600-to-1 ratio. By providing additional counselors, we can reduce that to about 325 on average for the middle schools. And at the comprehensive high school, we would go from about 469 to 342 counselors for the counselor caseload. And this is important because it would provide our students with more access, specifically for our students that are English learners, foster or low income. This would allow them to have more check-ins with their counselors, be monitored for reclassification, have mental health checks, more support. And we feel that this is going to be one of the things that really impacts our student success. In addition, we're also going to offer tutoring for English learners and our LTELs, our long-term English learners. This is going to be provided outside of the school day. So we have intervention within the day for small group instruction, and we have tutoring support outside the day that will also be done by teachers. Next, we have academic counselor support and professional development to create district-wide counselor professional learning communities and receive training on counselors' best practices. So this is going to be training and support for our counselors. We're increasing the number of counselors. We want to make sure that they're all trained with the same mission and vision and strategies. So we want to have a PLC for our counselors to train them and make sure that the same strategies, the same vision is being carried out at all the secondary sites. Next, support for small group instruction. So here, this is going to be para educators that are supporting our 4th and 5th grade classrooms to make sure that our students at those levels have additional support through instructional aids. Next, we have provide parent workshops on a variety of topics. So our parents really said, we want to partner with El Rancho. We want to help our students at home. So if you're teaching our kids to meet their A through G requirements, we want to know what those are. If you're teaching my kid NGSS, let me support at home and teach me what the next generation standards are. So this will be a variety of topics that our parents will have access to, so we could really create a true partnership where the same lessons are being taught at school and reinforced at home. We also want to create awareness, right? We have some students that might want to apply to college that don't know about the FAFSA, that don't know about subsidized Perkin loans. And so we want to demystify that for our parents and make it more accessible. Okay. And lastly, our school community liaisons for foster homeless student case management. This is a position that already exists, and she has done an incredible job of improving student engagement, which includes for the school year of 2019-2020, a 100% graduation rate for our foster homeless youth. And this position had previously been grant funded. However, that grant fund has run out. And as a district, we have a responsibility to support and monitor this population. And the total cost for goal 2 would be $2,714,315. Now, next slide, please. So we're talking about a lot of money, and we want to make sure that as we implement these actions, we're really monitoring how these actions are progressing and whether or not we're reaching our goal. So we have several metrics that we want to use. And on one side, you see the metric. On the other side, you see the baseline, where we're starting off from. So we want to survey our staff. Our goal is about engaging our students, our parents, and our staff members. So we want to survey and see how accessible do you feel? How welcome do you feel when you come to work? Our EL reclassification rate, we are putting a lot of resources into our English learners. Are these resources working? In combination with that, not just only reclassification, but on our LPAC, what is our proficiency rate? Parent surveys to gauge if the district is giving them what they need as partners. Student survey through our Chicks of California Healthy Kids survey, we're going to engage with them and see if they're the rate of student welcome, our students feeling at home, connected to the school, and feeling like there's a person there that they can really trust is growing. And then lastly, because we say we want to make sure that our students have access to a broad range of courses and feel that they can access them, are students enrolling in other courses? We have the core, but are students accessing IB, AP, honors, AVID, Project Lead the Way, dual enrollment? So we want to measure all those things to make sure that our students have access and there are no barriers in them challenging themselves or exploring other opportunities. And now for goal 3, I'll hand it over to Ms. Castanon.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez, and good evening, everyone. We will now look at the 5 actions that we have for our third and last goal, which is students will leave the El Rancho Unified School District goal-orientated with the ability to think critically and creatively, work collaboratively, communicate effectively, and be civically engaged. As you can see, 57.5% of our stakeholders want to increase career tech offerings at the secondary level. 57% also feel that providing staff training to support academic and social and emotional interventions for students is a priority, while more than half of our stakeholder respondents, 52%, feel that providing a mental health counselor for each school site is a priority for our students. 51% also want to continue to fund school security officers and school peace officers. And 46.5% of our stakeholders want to fund academic programs such as project-based learning, PBL, advancement via individual determination, which we all know as AVID, and the International Baccalaureate IB program for our students. Next slide, please. In order for us to meet this goal, we've identified $2,857,006. As you can see, we've allocated the following amounts for each action. $2,007,213 have been budgeted for us to have mental health counselors at school sites and mental health liaisons at the district. To support our students with character development and behavior intervention programs, such as PBIS, $279,412 has been budgeted. For our students to have the opportunity for career exploration, with each school site receiving $15,000 in allocation, $210,000 has been budgeted for that action. $135,000 has been allocated for academic programs, while $100,000 has been budgeted for career tech education expansion. All our stakeholder groups, especially our students, expressed interest in an after-school enrichment programs, such as clubs and sports. To be able to provide these activities, $63,504 has been allocated for this action. The final action for Goal 3 is for a school community liaison for foster and homeless student case management, and $51,877 was budgeted for that action. Next slide, please. In order for us to make sure we're making the necessary progress to meet this goal, we've identified the following metrics: individualized graduation and culmination plans, CAS, math, and ELA scores for our 11th grade students, and it's the state seal of civic engagement. Ms. Chavez Diaz and Ms. Gonzalez will now share with you the budget overview for parents.
Okay, we could have the next slide, please. So the budget overview for parents is a component of the LCAP, and that is designed to provide parents with a summary of budget information related to the LCAP. As indicated on this slide, it includes the following 3 components. So it includes projected revenue, budgeted expenditures in the LCAP, and increase and improve services. Next slide. This chart shows the total general purpose revenue El Rancho Unified School District expects to receive in the coming year from all sources. School districts receive funding from different sources: state funds under the Local Control Funding Formula, LCFF, other state funds, local funds, and federal funds. LCFF funds include a base level of funding for all ELAs and extra funding called supplemental and concentration grants to ELAs based on enrollment of high-need students. These groups include foster youth, English learners, and low-income students. Okay, now the total revenue projected for El Rancho Unified School District is $113,948,336, of which $89,729,403 is local control funding formula. $8,776,604 is other state funds. $3,455,058 is local funds, and $11,987,271 is federal funds. Of the $89,729,403 in LCFF funds, $17,000 368,527 is generated based on the enrollment of high need students. So that 17 million is money that we are given as a district to support our foster youth, our English learner, and our low income students. We want to make sure that that's clear. Those 17 million is additional money that we get to really focus on these special groups of students and provide them with extra support so that they can succeed in our district and in their academic careers. And now I'll hand it over to Ms. Gonzalez for the end of our presentation.
Thank you. So here, this chart provides us with a very quick summary of the funds that El Rancho plans to allocate in 2021 and 2022. And it shows how much of our planned actions and services are going to be in the LCAP. So as indicated here, ERUSD plans to spend $114,950,667. And so that's for the 2021-2022 school year. Now, of that amount, $64,968,250 is tied to actions and services that are in the draft LCAP that we presented to you just now. Now, there are, as you can see, there are some expenditures that are not included in the LCAP, and we did want to provide you with some information about those. So the most significant general fund expenditures that you will not find in the LCAP are primarily related to the salaries of administrators, some of our certificated staff and classified staff, and support staff, and also expenditures that would not be tied specifically to the goals and actions that you see here in the LCAP. And in addition, some of those other expenditures that are not captured here in the LCAP might include matters like school facilities and maintenance, as well as expenditures that are generally related to our overhead expenses. Next slide, please. So as Ms. Chavez-Diaz was explaining, we do receive additional resources to support what are classified as high need students. So the state deems those to be our students that are in foster care, students that are considered low income, as well as our English language learners. Now, what this particular slide captures is a comparison of our budgeted expenditures versus our actual expenditures in 2020-21. So what I want to emphasize here is that this is a look at what has taken place during this school year. And so it's a bit different from the other information that we have been explaining tonight, and that it's capturing expenses in the past as opposed to us forecasting what we're going to be spending. So you'll see here that in our learning continuity plan, we did budget $3,732,605 to support our high need students. Our actual expenditures were about $3,401,812. So you will see that there was a bit of a discrepancy there. We went through and analyzed our planned expenses versus our actual expenses, and a couple of items where we did see that there were some notable differences were in the area of supports for English learners, where we were able to provide the supports needed. However, we were able to provide those via our EL resource teacher, and so therefore we did not accrue any additional costs. In looking at another contribution in terms of our spending that resulted in a lower allocation for our high need students was parent workshops. And so as a result of the pandemic, we did see a delay in terms of a return to in-person instruction, as well as in-person parent workshops. And so what we were able to do was have staff that became very adept at recording or streaming different parent workshops. And as a result, parents could watch those on demand, and it didn't necessitate paying additional dollars for staff to deliver the workshops on multiple occasions in person. And so those were some unanticipated savings that we accrued, and it does explain our discrepancy that you see here in terms of our supports for high need students. So again, I'd like to emphasize that here the discrepancy was really a function of savings as opposed to not serving our students. Next slide, please. So now in terms of our next steps, this has been a lengthy journey that we have been on in respect to our LCAP. As Dr. Esparza referenced previously, we have submitted our LCAP to LACO for review for a preliminary kind of evaluation so that they could provide feedback to us. In particular on compliance-based items to make certain that we are meeting not only the spirit of the law, but the letter of it. And so we will be receiving that feedback within the next potentially 24 hours. We will rapidly work to incorporate those revisions, and we are looking forward to bringing a finalized LCAP forward for our next board meeting on June 27th for your consideration. In addition, in terms of looking ahead, as we mentioned previously, this is going to be an annual process that we engage in respect to our LCAP annual update. And so at approximately this time next year, we will be convening to share with you the progress that we have made in respect to our identified metrics and meeting our goals that we have delineated in this LCAP for the 2021-2024 time period. Next slide, please. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. And at this point, we would be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you to the three directors. You have definitely done well said in the public comments, all the work that went behind this. Before I ask the board members, I'd like some clarification, Dr. Esparza, because here we have the information on the LCAP, but on item 6A, we have the public hearing. So board members will have questions here in the information items, but also some of the questions you may have would be related to this item 6A on the agenda. That's about right, Dr. Esparza?
Yes.
Okay. So having said that, I just like to front load this, preface this that we'll have some questions, but it is because the board it's requesting clarification and a better understanding. We're not approving this today. This is just a hearing. This is just informational item, but these questions will help all of us to clarify some questions that may be out there as well in the community, because this will be going, the final copy, the final plan will be submitted to LACO after the board approves it. So there'll be some questions forthcoming. And with that, I now would like to ask the board members if for you to please pose your questions and your comments. I'm not going in any particular order. Yes, Ms. Perez.
I just have a quick question. So are we asking the questions now or are we asking them in the public hearing? Because I'm a little confused the difference.
Well, you may have some questions related to the specific information that was presented to it that we heard right now. But then, there'll be other questions because on the on item 6A, it is a more detailed plan. This is, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, what we have just heard is it's the overall, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
it's the overall of the LCAP.
The details of it are included in this item under 6A. So yes, I'm sure there are questions here and there will be questions as well, but it's just for you to be aware that some of the questions that you may have right now could perhaps also wait until we go to the item 6A. Does that clarify for you, Perez?
Dr. Marino, if I may.
Yes, of course.
I'm any clarification because I believe a public hearing is to gather input from the community. I've never heard of a public hearing for board members to ask questions.
Okay. Well, but
Because the
It
whole
is-
purpose of a public hearing is to gather the feedback and information from the
from the
community.
public, correct.
Correct.
But at the same time, this is the opportunity for board members to ask for clarification on some items.
If you'd like to do that now during the informational items, we can do that.
Okay? As long as board members have the opportunity to ask questions, absolutely. Because the next time it comes to the board, it will be for approval.
And if you'd like, we could go to 5B and go through the budget if any of it is financial and give the informational presentation on the budget and then come back and answer any questions that have to do with any of the content or any of the budget prior to going to the public hearing piece.
Mhm, mhm. Well, then let's stay with 5A. So we'll be asking board members, you have questions or comments? I believe Ms. Perez, I had called on you.
Yeah, would it be, and this is just a suggestion, would it be easier to view it by goal so that we don't, does that make sense? So like if I have questions on goal 1, 2, and 3, is it okay if like the board, we focus just on goal 1, ask our questions and clarifications, and then go to goal 2, and then go to goal 3? I don't know if that's okay with the board.
Well, I will pretty much leave it for the board members to ask questions as they have seen them. I
Okay.
believe that, yeah.
Just because I have a bunch of questions.
Fine. That's what we're here for.
My first question is a para-educator. What is that?
So a paraeducator would be, sorry, go ahead, Roberta.
Go ahead, Ms. Chavez Diaz.
I was gonna say paraeducator would be like instructional aid that would be assigned to the classroom to support the teacher and the students.
So for the small group instruction, you mentioned for elementary, pre-K through 5th, what about the upper grade levels, like middle school and high school? Like for small group instruction?
So for the upper grades, we would do it a little differently. The upper grades would have different interventions. Like for example, when we work with the TOSAs to really work with teachers on that primary instruction to make sure that they have the support. The small group instruction is something that we're doing more to focus at the elementary level. The interventions at secondary would look a little different.
I might also add that for our English learners, we are also making an investment in some special opportunities for them to work towards developing proficiency in English. And many of those will entail a smaller setting, either after school, potentially on a weekend, to enhance their skill base. And so there are some real particular supports that are identified by student group to meet their needs. But as Ms. Chavez indicated, there have been some real strategic determinations that have been made, and looking at all of the brain research and all of the work that talks about, reading by 9 and the real critical period of the primary grades in positioning students for long-term success. So as Ms. Chavez Diaz indicated, interventions and supports will look different along the grade span.
And another piece that I'd like to add is we make every effort to really protect our, for example, our designated ELD classes and make those smaller so the teachers really have that protected time to work with the students. So it's something that when we're working with the master schedule, we always try to keep our English learners and our other special populations in mind as we build it so that we can ensure that they're getting that small group instruction during the day.
And so I know you mentioned that the plan doesn't, this plan is going to focus on a certain type of student. Because my concern is, I was an algebra 7th grade math teacher, right? We had 35 students in a classroom. Small group instruction is critical, even at the middle school level. I agree, it's also elementary, but the middle school and the high school level, I'm curious to see what are we doing for the students that are high need? And so that's why I'm wondering, maybe that's not part of the LCAP, maybe that's part of another plan. So I just wanted to clarify that piece.
Right, and Ms. Perez, we are doing different things. So for example, at the middle school level, one of the things that Ms. Tristan and Mr. Ormseth have really been spearheading is the middle school math cohort. So what we're really trying to focus on at the secondary level, and specifically in this example is math, is making sure that that first instruction the kids get is the best possible instruction. So together they've worked on pacing guides, instructional strategies. How do we do integrated ELD in math? Creating formative assessments and reteaching lessons. So we're taking kind of a different approach at the secondary level, and we want to build that model for our other subject areas as well, so that is being addressed within the content area for students.
Okay. That would be maybe. Oh, sorry.
No, just to add also, because I think what you mentioned is really important, that, there's all the different like pots of money and how we're kind of pacing it out. And so one of the things that came to mind was that, and we heard this during stakeholder sessions, was that parents of students at differing levels of proficiency in different content areas were talking about, my student needs help. And so we were trying to look strategically at, how do we allocate our finite resources in the most effective way? So we have those additional individuals in our elementary schools to provide support, but we also said we have this reality where students across the grade span and all the different content areas need support. We might have a student who is in math classes that might be considered lower level in high school that needs support, as well as a student in AP Calculus who says, hey, I need some support at 10 o'clock at night with my assignments. So within the ELO, we are looking at expanded learning opportunities grant. We're looking at spending some of those resources to provide online tutoring supports. And one thing that comes to mind in terms of how we utilize our different resources is that I believe we can leverage some of our ESSER funds to continue to provide that support, particularly in this post-pandemic 2 to 3 year period where students may have some real gaps. So whereas in the elementary level and primary grades, it may be that person facilitating a small group, at a secondary level, it may be more individualized support via a tutor. But I think it really speaks to, the great many needs that are present in any given school district, and how you strategize about allocating the resources in the best possible way based on research and best practices. And it's a very tough decision, but I think that using our different resources, including ESSER funds that we will be developing our plan for in the imminent future, we can address those needs.
Okay. No, thank you. Because I did feel that a lot of the support was for elementary. And so for me, the secondary, I'm like, how are we focusing on the secondary? So thank you for that. That makes sense, the grant and the other plans. My other, so my next piece is just suggestions. And I know I mentioned some of them earlier. For goal number one, I would like to see interim assessments as part of a metric. And I do understand that we're going to have an annual review of the LCAP. I think it should be more for specific things like interim assessments. We can take a look. I understand that some of the metrics we only get them once a year, so make sure to progress them. But if we can take a look at interim assessments for one of them. The other one is, sorry, I'm just writing this down. I would be interested in seeing the chronic absenteeism rate. I know we had on there the, I forget which rate we had, I think the dropout rate, but I'm curious to see the absenteeism rate, the attendance rate, those are things. And I don't know, I believe that would be goal 2, correct me if I'm wrong. So that would be my suggestion. And then for goal number 3 about the pupil outcome, one of the things that I would love to see is, I know we talked about it, internships, and I don't know exactly how we could measure, this is just suggestions, but like internships, to see more students in internships, right? Because that's where they're really going to get those career skills. The other thing is we talk about critical thinking. I'm going to advocate for this. One of the most important things, and problem solving, coding, and 21st century. Like I would love to see some of that also in the goal number 3, because I think if the pupil outcome, we need to make them, I think someone mentioned 21st century ready, but I don't see any action talking about, we talk about access to technology, but we don't really talk about the learning piece of technology. So if we can somehow work that in. And then also leadership. And I don't know exactly how to measure that, but I would love to see more of the leadership with the pupil outcome, to see how many students do we have in ASB, how many leadership opportunities do we have at the high school, the middle school, the elementary school level. Sorry. And then the last suggestion for goal number, I believe 1, you mentioned the IB program, you mentioned the AVID program. I would love to see the dual enrollment program with the community colleges, and that might already be on there. I didn't see it, so I just wanted to confirm. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank
you. My question.
All right. No, thank you, Ms. Perez. Ms. Mejia?
Hi. So I submitted my questions, and all my questions were answered.
Okay.
I had a lot of similar questions. Well, not a lot of similar, but I have some similar questions, and I want to thank Jack Cabinet, Jasmine Talucias, Gonzalez, Castanon. Thank you for all the questions that were answered. I just want to stress that I'm express my gratitude because this is a robust plan, and I love that it is centered on the whole child. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I love when you keep on stating it's an investment. It's an investment. It is an investment. I don't look at it like spending. I look at it like an investment in our children and improving student outcomes. I love that you emphasize parents as partners. And I love the comments from our parents that we received, because it's like they stated, we're shifting towards a different direction, and I'm glad that it's being recognized. And that's all thanks to all of you for all your work, and that this plan was made with all stakeholder input. I'm very, very grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mejia. Ms. Castillo?
Hello, I have to tell all of those people who work in this LCAP, you took a very, very good approach in doing the surveys. I mean, it was a lot of work on your side. You were able to synthesize the information. So I think that was really good. And I think, but I'm not that familiar with educational plans. So excuse me for not being a little bit more, but I look at a bigger picture. And so the one thing that sort of struck me a little bit was the funding sources. And like Esther, I submitted 3 pages of questions myself and got responses. So I didn't realize that some of the funding sources in the LCAP included funds from ELO as well as the ISR funds, which is confusing, not confusing, but keep in mind that in one area we were addressing learning loss. And then there is another place where we're looking at improving student performance. So I wanted to know, are you going to measure those differently? Because that really is important, because those funds really were there set up to do like the tutoring and providing some of the other funds to make sure that we help our students gain the experience that they needed to succeed. Now, the one thing that I was concerned with is that there wasn't a whole lot of discussions on 2 areas that I feel are important. One has to do with community hubs, because you did have that in your surveys, that people were looking for a place to get together, maybe to learn. It could be a place where students can get together to access the technology or get the support they need. I didn't see that address. And I think that we need to plan on that. The other part that I thought needed to have some thoughts going into in the future is the use of hybrid learning. It looks to me like we're going back to a traditional environment. And that's a little concerning to me, because I believe that you've got a population now that's really tech savvy, and you want to engage on them to continue using their technical skills as well as augment them, because that is what is going to be the future. I had just been in a conference, and it identifies in terms of education, this is for the higher levels, the universities. In about 2 years, you're going to be seeing a 50-50% of hybrid and traditional learning. So, but it is 2 years out, because they have to figure out how to do it. And the other thing that was sort of interesting is that a lot of students going to college, there's been a drop in terms of people applying to colleges. So industry is recognizing that college degrees do not lead to success in the workplace. What they're saying is credentialing in certain areas may be more important. So they're looking at having both. A student that might be credentialed in your technology, like your coding, your cybersecurity, as well as your Internet of Things, your AI, artificial intelligence, that is changing very dramatically now. So when you look at the career, exploring careers, it would behoove us to look at what can we offer, not in the elementary, but sort of emerging out of the secondary and senior schools. But put that on your radar so that you can think about that in the next go round. Those are my only comments. But you did a good job in getting that information. My other comment is we would have liked to see the report sooner than later. We got it on Friday, so we didn't have a chance to provide input or to give us some suggestions. And hopefully in the future, you change that. So we get it a month in advance so that we can give you some of our perceptions and our experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castillo. I'll just make some very brief comments myself, aside from just saying thank you, because I certainly understand the tremendous amount of work that went into this, the hours. And I don't mean just the hours during your work schedule, but the hours after your work schedule, just to put it all together. But it's just evident from some of the comments we heard and from the public and the comments you've heard so far that you certainly have, like always, done a good job with this. Now, these are the goals that will promote systemic changes for the next 3 years through 2024. And I understand there will be annually, there'll be a revision to see whether we have met our goals or not. I do have a question. If you could just please clarify for me. And this, I'm going to say it's under goal 1, the metrics, where you have goal 1, the conditions of learning metrics for evaluation. Your metrics mention college and career readiness, the dashboard, the A through G, the AP pass rates, the college application rate, etc. So my question is, what about the metrics at the elementary level? Help me to understand that. Are the metrics to measure the success of this goal at the elementary level, or what are they?
Yes, absolutely. And that was part of a kind of a broader philosophical discussion we had kind of had at cabinet in terms of what are those cut points that we want to look at. And through some of our conversation with stakeholders, including a conversation this morning, we went through and identified some additional metrics at the elementary level to gauge progress and to sort of look at sort of the cut points, not just at high school, but to look at something sooner to see how our students are faring. And given our emphasis on reading by 9, we determined we would take a look at 3rd grade. We would look at 3rd grade CASP scores in ELA and math, as well as the interim assessments. And as a matter of fact, as we've mentioned, this document is literally, evolving by the day as we get more input to refine it based on questions that are posed and conversations that are had. And so, Ms. Chavez-Diaz, if you were to open up our document right now, you would see that Ms. Chavez-Diaz, based on our conversations, went through and made some of those additions just this morning. So yes, we do have that information.
And so I wanted to add that I really thank you guys for the feedback you gave us, because you were able to give us some great suggestions. Arlene, I just wrote down the chronic absenteeism that'll go into goal 2. Today, after we had a conversation with cabinet, we identified we're going to look at the interim assessments that are the ERUSD interim assessment for 3rd grade in ELA and math, for 7th grade for middle school, and for 10th grade at high school, so that we have those metrics. And those are that we're adding as we go. And we're getting feedback from you guys. We're getting feedback from the community, and it's really helping us to create a robust picture of what we're doing. So again, we appreciate it. And please know that I am trying to figure out a way to how to gauge that leadership piece at high school, whether it's for our participation in clubs or the number of our students that run for office, for ASB at elementary, middle school, and high school. But we really want to capture all those pieces. So again, thank you for that feedback, because it will be reflected in our report when you see it on before June 22nd, but in the final draft.
And I'd like to add that we will be adding the interim assessments all grade levels will participate in, but the gathering of the data and reviewing of that from the district level, as it's different at the elementary school or the middle or the high school levels. What they do is they have grade level meetings, and we support on providing professional development on how to run those grade level meetings to be able to identify and target students who need that extra support, or students who need an enrichment. And so we want to make sure that that people don't think that there is only going to be an assessment for third graders, seventh graders, and 10th graders. No, the assessments are across the board. Same for LPAC, making sure that all our EL students participate in taking the LPAC, not only the level 3 students. As I came into the district, that's what was happening. Want to make sure that all our students are taking the LPAC, and that we're analyzing that data, and we're also at the district level selecting the different grade levels to be able to identify and see where there are strengths and weaknesses, and what it is that we can do from the district to support at the school sites.
Thank you, Dr. Esparza. One other question I had here on the metrics for goal 3, you have the metrics, not for goal 2, I believe, hang on. Right, for goal 2, the metrics for goal 2, which is engagement, goal 2, the metrics I see here are, aside from the staff surveys, which will be conducted, you have only the EL reclassification rate and the LPAC proficient scores. Will this truly measure what we intend to do with goal number 2, engagement? Or I'm certain there will be other metrics that will be used to assess the progress and the success of this goal as we go on into year 2 and 3.
One of the things I think, Dr. Marino, that's going to be a big asset for us is to be able to obtain the services which were written into the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant Plan.
Yeah.
Company that specializes in survey design and construction, because I think that they will be able to craft surveys that really outpace what we've been able to do internally in terms of being able to provide very specific information on specific indicators of engagement. I think you're absolutely accurate in terms of sort of summarizing some of the challenge that we encountered in thinking about how do you operationalize these concepts? So how do you operationalize engagement? What we were able to do is to think about, and so we welcome any suggestions or ideas, because it is, a cognitive challenge in terms of trying to figure that out. But what we thought about specific to ELs was the idea that in order for ELs to really engage academically, which is also such kind of a precursor to feeling socially engaged and welcome, was being able to access core curriculum. And so that's where you'll see that reclassification as an indicator of engagement. But what I will say is absolutely, if there are any great suggestions about how to operationalize engagement beyond what we have here, we would be super eager to hear that.
And with that being said, a couple of pieces that you have just suggested, we're going to go back and add chronic absenteeism. We're going to add attendance rate. We're going to add dropout rate. And sometimes you might see the same metric appear in different goals because it does relate to more than one. So we're going to go back and add those pieces to make sure that we're creating a bigger picture, a broader picture to really gauge all facets of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because I know that within the report itself, the plan itself, with all the details, which is, we're going to see in the following section, you identify under the reflections piece, you identify 2 very key areas, and that is the learning deficiencies of the EL students and the reclassification of this of the EL students. So what I suggest and would like to see a very robust targeted program to address those learning deficiencies in our students. That's one comment. The other one is this, we need to seize the moment now. What is it? Carpe diem, seize the moment. We have our parents thoroughly engaged in ways that they have never been engaged before. as a former teacher and being where you are now, one of the, and as an administrator, one of the most challenging things to do is engaging parents. But now parents had no choice. They were hands-on. They were the teachers, so they know what it is. So what I'm saying is this is the moment to really keep them involved, engage them. And so when I saw this goal, I said, excellent. And we must provide the resources and find the ways and just do what we need to do, because the progress that our students made in this past year, it was in part thanks to the support in the home. So I think the parents now really were able to fully understand what it takes to help a child at home, because they were there every day. So having this parent engagement, these parent workshops, these hubs, it's key for us to implement this systemic change across the year. So I think that what you have done so far, we must continue to build on that, because the moment is now. That's all I have to say on this plan, on your work. Thank you so much again. And as it was stated earlier, it's organic. It continues to change and evolve, but we definitely look forward to those interim assessments that were mentioned before, because we definitely want to see the progress. Why? Because if we're not reaching our target, we want to be able to take corrective action at the time and not at the end of the first year. So you know what I'm talking about. So thank you once again for everything you've done. We're off to a good start. Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, Ms. Mejia, no, I saw Ms. Mejia's hand.
Thank you, Dr. Marino. I just want to make a recommendation, and hopefully my colleagues will concur. I'd like to recommend that for next year, before any public hearing, we have a study session where we can collaborate and talk.
Very good suggestion. Very good suggestion, because it is important. We're all together. We're all a team. I know that it's stakeholder input, but all voices, give an opportunity for all voices to be heard. But that's a very good suggestion, Ms. Mejia. Definitely. Yeah. Dr. Esparza, further comments on this?
I concur with Ms. Mejia on that. I think that next year and the years to follow, as the LCAP evolves, that we have study sessions with the board prior to any public hearing or any request for approval, so that at that point in time, the board can continue to give input and just hear what it is that we're able to present, and being able to also provide the results of the metrics in advance. We're going to try. LACO gives deadlines, and usually the deadline is at the end of June, and we don't receive, lots of our data until July or August. So some of our data may be preliminary in the year to come, but it's an excellent idea for us to be able to front load everything before having to come to a public hearing with this.
Thank you, Dr. Esparza. Okay, so let's move on now.
Or suggestion.
Sorry, Ms. Pettis. I didn't see your.
I know you're on your iPad, so I'm like,
it's kind of dark, and I didn't see your hand.
Yes. Another suggestion that, and not right now, because I know you all are overwhelmed with stuff, but a template to see. We talk about the annual and the study session, but for me, it's really important to decide what are the goals that we're going to be evaluated on an annual basis, and what are the goals that we can evaluate either on a quarter basis or on a semester base, right? So interim assessments, we're going to be seeing those more frequently. I'm not too sure about the other metrics. You're more of an expert, but I would love to see more of like, these are the goals that we're going to see, we're going to check off at the end of the year. These are the goals we could be checking every quarter or every semester, just so that we can get updates at the board meetings. The way that budget is, every, I think, quarter, correct me if I'm wrong, we get like budget updates. I would love to see like, what are the metrics that we can see every quarter? Does that make sense? Like a list of like, what are we going to see every year? And what are we going to see more frequently, or can we see more frequently?
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you so much for everything. I didn't thank you, but really thank you so much for everything. That's amazing.
Thank you, Ms. Pettis. All right.
Can I
We
make
can
a
now move
comment,
on.
Dr. Marino?
Yes, go ahead.
Before we end, in hearing, I'm writing down some of the suggestions, some of the comments from board members. I do want to clarify that there is a budget for us to be able to purchase technology, and it's not just for technology. Our teachers will continue to use technology in the classroom, not just like overhead cameras or anything like that. We want them to continue to use some of the applications that we've purchased to enhance their lessons. We also want to make sure that when we talk about a textbook adoption, and it may not be literally a textbook, it may be an application for a textbook, and textbooks online are what's most used in the world nowadays. And so we want to start working with our staff to make sure that we start purchasing textbooks online.
Thank you, Dr. Esparza. So we'll get an update, a yearly update, right, about this around this time of the year.
Yes.
Okay. So, or before. Well, I was just going to, hopefully, well, definitely before, because this was a 3-year plan. So the update should take less time. It's just updating and putting, just including the progress, etc. So yeah, hopefully it'll be before.
Yes.
All right.
And one last thing before I end, is that I am extremely proud of the team that I'm working with. It's an amazing team. They've done a great job. And I really, really want to push that we consider working the way we have been. And I know they're tired, and I know they're probably like, what is she talking about? But we do need to have textbook adoptions in this district. I am used to big districts. We adopt textbooks every 5, 6, sometimes 7 years. And there are textbooks in this district that have outlived their lifespan twice as much or 3 times as much as that. We have textbooks in some, especially at the secondary level, that teachers have been using for the past 15 years. And I want to make sure that we do our due diligence in changing that and being able to provide them the best quality. And that is, something new and something that they're going to really be able to use in their classrooms to help them guide their lessons. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. All right. 5B, presentation of El Rancho Unified School District's 2021-22 budget to the Board of Education, Ms. Marian Sorrell.
Good evening, everyone. Roland, if you could bring my slides up for me, please. Thank you. And you can skip to the next one if you like. Thank you. So first, I'd like to thank Lily Huntenberg for all of her work on the budget, as well as everyone else on the fiscal team. And I'm trying to get myself up to speed very quickly on this. So this first slide, I'd like to go through with you the budget cycle for a school district. So the first one is adopting a budget, which will happen at our next board meeting. And that's required to be adopted and submitted to the LA County Office of Education by June 30th each year. So we send them a DAT file with all the detail, as well as the hard copies of the SACS reports and the certifications. There is an option of doing a 45-day revise to your budget. If that is done, it's due August 15th to the county office. Generally speaking, it's not done very often. It has been done in past years when there's a major change to the governor's budget. So they give us information at the May revise, and then when the budget's actually approved in June or July at the state level, if there's a major change, then we would do a 45-day revise. The first interim, which gives you information of what's happened in the district from the start of school through October, is presented and due by December 15th to the county and must be approved by the board prior to that date. And then the second interim, same kind of process, that's due March 15th. A third interim is available to be done, but really not necessary if we're making all of our budget adjustments during the year on a timely basis. It's really not necessary. So I'm hoping that we won't need to do one of those next year. The unaudited actuals, which are due by September 15th, that reflects the year-end closing. So that would reflect the entire school year. It's called unaudited because the auditors haven't finished their work yet. So that's presented to the county September 15th. And then the audited financials are due the middle of December it was a bit late this year, and I will be asking the board and the superintendent to go out an RFP for a new audit firm. Their contract finishes through this school year, and then I will be asking to do that. Next slide, please. So this slide's just to review a little bit of our sources and uses. I'm going to go a little bit quickly because the CIA team did a very nice job of covering a lot of this information in their LCAP presentation. But the sources of revenue for a school district are the local control funding formula. That's the major piece, and that's state funding. The other is federal revenue, which is title programs, special education, other state revenue, and local revenue. Other state revenue is things like mandated cost reimbursements. There are certain functions that the district has to do, and we get a small reimbursement for doing those administrative tasks. Restricted and unrestricted lottery, and the ACES after school education program, which this district does receive funding for. And then the funds are used for certificated and classified salaries and benefits, instructional materials, services, and maintenance. The LCAP, which we just spent quite a bit of time going through, it's really important to remember that the LCAP is a plan, but it's not a source of revenue. And the LCAP talks about all the money that's in Fund 1. So this year and next year, the ESSER funds and all the COVID funding that we are so wonderfully getting, that will be included in the LCAP plan because all of that money comes into the general fund. So that's Fund 1, and that's why it's referenced in the LCAP, because that money isn't traditionally available, but it is part of Fund 1. And it doesn't address all of the activities, as CIA explained very clearly. It does the majority, but there are things like overhead that they mentioned, like insurance, administration, those kinds of things that aren't called out specifically in any of the goals or actions. When we're putting a budget together, some of the things that we consider are providing a balanced budget, giving priority to the money for student and site needs, of course, following LCAP priorities, maintaining facilities, and any increases in statutory benefits. Statutory benefits are any of the employer taxes that we have to pay on payroll, as well as STRS and PERS and health and welfare. And we also consider, possible compensation. Next slide, please. Some of the guidelines that are included in the 21-22 budget is that direct and indirect charges are applied where legally allowed. And so some funding allows you to take a percentage to cover administrative costs. And there's a minimum by district, and there's also an amount that is by funding source. So it varies a bit, but we do take advantage of that whenever possible. Also transfers to the general fund reserves that are required by the board, which for El Rancho is 3%. There's a cost of living adjustment in 21-22 of 5.07, and they're calling it a super COLA cost of living adjustment because it's a little bit of catch up for last year when there was no COLA. That's why it's so high for 21-22, because there wasn't really any for 2021. And 2.48 for 22-23 and 3.11 for 23-24. This is based on information provided at the governor's revise in May. It could change before the budget is signed, but the state's doing really well, so we're hoping that it will definitely stay the same or perhaps go up. Step and column costs are included, and that's for salaries when a staff member is moving along in their pay scale based on their years of service. That's included in this calculation. The district has historically set aside $800,000 each year. In deferred maintenance, it's primarily been attributed to roofing projects, and we will be bringing a roofing project to the board for consideration at our meeting on the 22nd. The other part that's included here is the restricted routine maintenance. And this is a state requirement that 3% of total expenditures are set aside each year for maintenance. These are estimates based on our estimated expenditures. However, during the year-end close, we true that up for actual expenditure, so it is often adjusted. And we are meeting the minimum reserve of the state of 3%. So when we're talking about funding for our students, they each have a base grant. So TK through 3 has a base grant of $8,092, and then they get an additional $842 per student per ADA because the younger grades have smaller class sizes. So it's to help offset that additional expense. And so the amount they get, we will be getting for 21-22 is $8,934. For grades 4 to 6, it's 8,214. They do not enjoy the grade span adjustment. 7 through 8 is 8,458. They also don't enjoy the grade span adjustment, but our students in 9 through 12 have a base of 9,802, and they get a grade span adjustment of 255 for a total of 10,057. They primarily get that additional money related to science and CTE classes because there are extra materials needed for those classrooms. Roland, can you go to the next slide? I'm sorry, I lost track. Thank you. We are going to receive unrestricted lottery of $150 per ADA this year, and that's the same amount that's projected for the next couple of years, as well as $49 per ADA for restricted lottery. Restricted lottery is to be used on textbooks, whether they're a hard copy textbook or electronic textbooks, but that is restricted what the use is for. The unrestricted lottery can be used for pretty much everything or anything. One thing some people don't realize, because the lottery seems terrific for all the extra funding for schools, the unfortunate thing is however much you get in lottery is taken away from your LCFF funding. If you get $150,000 of lottery, they take $150,000 from your base. So it sounds really good, but it's not quite as good as one would hope. For mandated block grants for students K through 8, we will receive $32.79 per ADA, which is up just a few pennies from the prior year. And for grades 9 through 12, $63.17, which is up about $1 from the prior year. Offsetting that is our STRS and PERS rates do continue to climb quite steeply, and that's quite expensive for the district. Okay, so this slide depicts our estimated revenue in the first column is 2020, 2021, and that's our estimate right now before we close the book. So we'll be bringing back the unaudited actuals when we finish closing during July and the early part of August. And then we have our projected revenue for 21, 22 through 23, 24, and the related expenses. Sorry. So one thing that's important to know as we are looking forward is our ESSER money and our all those other funds related to COVID, they're one-time monies. Fiscal and the CIA group and the superintendent will be working this summer. Our first meeting is next week to start going through all the funding and putting a detailed plan proposal to bring back to the board later this summer for review. Some of that money is through 24, as they talked about during the LCAP presentation. And so we'll be laying out which of those funds we'll be holding aside for summer school and other supports to students. And also some of the money that we will be proposing is used on facilities where it's allowed. Next slide, please. So this slide is very similar to the one that was in the BOP that you already saw, because it's the same data just being presented in two different formats. So we've already gone through the revenue pieces with you. And then the next slide is the expenditures, which again, we reviewed in the BOP previously with you. We've got the classified salaries. Classified certificated salaries and employee benefits take up about 75% of the entire budget, which is actually slightly lower than many of our surrounding districts. 8% is for books and supplies, 13% for other operating, 1% for capital outlay, which is a very small amount for equipment or some building improvements, and 3% is other expenses. And our largest expense there is our payment for software and support to the county office. We also have contributions that the district makes to food service and deferred maintenance that come out of Fund 1. We will be using some of our ESSER money to support the losses in food service this year. That is an allowed expense, and it will be in the next year as well. Next slide, please. There we go. So I went through that pretty quickly because I think the CIA group went pretty deep in their presentation. Oh, one thing I want to add is we are building a model. It's almost finished for ADA projections. So we have history from 13, 14 forward. What I'll be bringing back to you is by site, by grade, exactly what's happening with our ADA and our enrollment. So you can see by site what's happening, and by grade. What I mean is if we have a third grader at a site, when we go to fourth grade, what percentage of those students are we retaining or losing? So we have that by site, and then we'll also have a summary to look at it at the district overall. I think it's important to look at the district overall as well as by site, because it can help us dig down to decide or determine or try to determine why we might be losing students. I'm very anxious to see what our students do the first couple weeks of school. We're not exactly sure what will happen post-pandemic, and so we'll layer that information in as well, and then make any changes to revenue projections that need to be made based on that new information once it's in.
Well, thank you, Ms. Sorrell, for the information on this projected budget. I only have a couple of questions, but first open it up to the board. The questions for Ms. Sorrell or comments?
I just have a question. Usually I only track 2 line items because it is what it is, the salaries and whatever benefits. But the 2 line items that I always have my view is on books and supplies and other operating expenses. And so what I've seen in the past is that we don't spend as much money as we should on books and supplies. So the budget and the expenditures, there's a variance. And I don't know why, but that's what it is. But the other one is the other operating expenses. And in those other operating expenses, I see those numbers going up. So my question is, are any of those items that are in the operating expense something that you could call is controllable? I remember years ago when I was managing my own department budget, we had budget and we had something that we called controllable. So we had an option of either funding an activity or not funding it to maintain when we maintained our annual budget. So is that where you have the opportunity to really have a tight budget so that some of the expenditures are looked at under a microscope? That's really what I'm looking for.
If I might, I'd like to respond to both of those pieces. So one of the things that the fiscal department will be doing on a go forward to keep a better track and to address the issue that you're raising, where we have a budget, we're really not spending all of it. We will be setting up meetings depending on the administrator, monthly or quarterly, depending on their comfort level with their budget, to review with them, here is your budget. What is your plan for your budget? And it'll be beyond just the sites. It will be all departments that have a budget, to make sure they're aware of what they have available. And we'll be monitoring that to make sure that they're spending throughout the year. If they don't need as much budget as they have, then we'll make adjustments for that as well. As far as the other operating expenses, let me dig into that a little bit deeper. I know what you're talking about, the controllable and not, and let me dig a little bit deeper in that and come back to you, if that's okay.
That'd be fine.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Castillo. Ms. Perez or Ms. Mejia, do you have any questions for Mr. Rayo or comments?
Go ahead, Arlene. You had your hand up first.
Okay, I can't see your hand, but right, sorry.
There. And thank you so much for the presentation. I just had a quick comment that when you mentioned the ADA, I know I had talked to Dr. Sparks about that I would love to see also. I would love to see that data, so I'm excited for that data, just to see the projections, and also talking about the exit. I think it's like the exit survey that I believe Mr. Soto Delgado talks about. Like, if students leave the district, why are they leaving the district? And so I'm really excited to get that data. So I just wanted to thank you.
Okay.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Perez. Ms. Mejia?
Yeah, likewise, like Ms. Perez, thank you, Mr. Rayo, for focusing on the ADA. It's so important for us to have that data and to try to analyze why there's declining enrollment. So thank you for focusing on that. Thank you for the presentation. And I look forward to the recommendations that you'll be working on with the superintendent for Fund 25 and Fund 40 for our facilities planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mejia. Well, Mr. Rayo, just like everyone else expressed there, thank you. Seriously, you just make it easy to understand. I do have a question for the clarification of our listeners. if you look at the multi-year estimates and projections, if we would just briefly explain, I see that our estimated for this coming year 2021 is at 111 plus million. But then the projected for 23-24, it's at 104. So we have there a variance of approximately $7 million. I know that the state revenue, is it the state revenue that's where we have a reduction, significant reduction? Yes. On other state revenue, from 21-22, it goes from 8.7 million to 2.107 million. If you would just clarify for the benefit of anyone listening, why those numbers change significantly and why, and what does it mean to be facing a 7-point, I'm sorry. Someone's ringing my doorbell through the intercom. I apologize. Anyway, those one, maybe we just clarify that.
Absolutely. So there are a couple things happening here in our revenue, which make it a little bit difficult, a little bit clumsy to look at. One of those is we have a hold harmless in 2021. So regardless of the number of students that we had, we still received our normal funding. But also mixed into 2021 and more specifically 21-22, there's a significant amount of state and federal COVID-related funding. So I think what I'll do is the next time I bring this back, I think I'm going to add a couple line items here for the revenue, and I'll tease out the pieces that are related to COVID, sort of that one-time revenue, so it's a little bit more obvious to folks to look at. So I'll do that. And then I'm expecting to have changes to revenue in 22-23, 23-24 after we finish our projection model for ADA and enrollment. I will kind of anticipate that. So that's the major component there, is that additional one-time funding that we received. But I think I can make it more clear next time. I think you might be muted, Dr. Marino.
What's happening with my intercom? Thank you.
And if I might add one more comment that I forgot to make, there's been a lot of conversation related to the reserve and what reserve level should be. There's been talk the last 3 years at the state level that they might limit reserves to 10%. And it's been talked about quite a bit. That has not been voted on or finalized yet. But what's interesting about that is the state's talking about limiting it to 10%, but in the very next breath, they will say they recommend for a unified district to have at least 17%. And 17% would really only cover us for 2 months of expenses. Mm. So it sounds really large, 17%, and I understand that, but honestly, it's about 2 months of expenses. So we have our ears very open and listening to see what the state's going to come back with. The other thing I should have mentioned is we are reviewing what we have reserved or assigned in the reserve. We have some money we're starting to put away for adoptions. As Dr. Esparza mentioned, we do need to do some adoption planning with CIA, and then we'll know what we think we need to set aside each year. We only get about $400,000 from the state specifically for textbooks, so that of course we can set aside. But we do also have to replace textbooks just from wear and tear, during the year. So some of that does get used for that. Mm-hmm. So we have the COVID funding to be working on this summer and early fall, the adoption planning, also facility maintenance projects based on what has come back from sites as a priority from them. And there we have a lot of pots, right? We have COVID money that we can use for that. We also have some deferred maintenance money that we can use. And then of course we have the bond projects that we'll be discussing as well. So it's going to be an exciting summer and early fall.
It certainly will be. Thank you, Mr. Rayo. Dr. Esparza?
Yes. With all of this, extremely, extremely important is that book adoption, making sure that we are going to be able to do this, not just for a certain grade level, but throughout the entire district. And for those of you who have attended El Rancho Unified School District and you visited some of the schools, I'm sure that you have seen some of the same materials, unfortunately. And so we want to enhance our academic program by making sure that we are providing the most updated curriculum to our staff. And that's not just at the elementary levels, that's all the way TK through 12. So it's going to take a lot of planning. We do know that, you know, we don't get a lot of money for the enhancements or the replacements of our textbooks, but we want to make sure that we start looking at all the different budgets so that we can get a lump sum to be able to do this. I know that NGSS was adopted just a few years ago here in El Rancho, and really being able to provide the literature that is needed for our staff to be able to, you know, with fidelity, implement NGSS at the district or at the district level, making sure that we are able to provide to each school site the fundings that they need for that curriculum. So it's something that we will be planning for this summer, and we'll have a nice hearty plan, not just for NGSS, but for ELA, for math, and so on and so forth, all the different content areas and how we will calendar those out within the next few years.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Esparza. All right, let's now move on to item 6, public hearing. 6A, this is the public hearing on the Local Control Accountability Plan, the LCAP for the 2021 through 2022 school year. It's required by Ed Code 52062. Dr. Esparza?
At this point in time, we have no public comments in regards to the public hearing.
Okay. No public comments on this one. I guess we can now move on to 6B.
Dr. Marino, if I may.
Yes, Ms. Mejia.
That includes any written comments on Dr. Esparza?
And no written comments either.
Thank you for the
any written comments that were provided at or from the DAC or DLAC participants were all answered, and the responses were provided to them.
Good. It's good. Absolutely. That means they had all the information they needed. Thank you. Okay.
Dr. Marino, if I may.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. So for procedure, it's appropriate to state when you open the public comment hearing at the time, and then if there's no comments, to close it.
All right. Point made. Thank you. So at this time, having no comments here, we officially close a public hearing on the LCAP for 21-22. Thank you. Now we'll open the public hearing for 6B for El Rancho Unified School District 2021-22 budget. Dr. Esparza?
And also for the budget item, we do not have anyone who has provided any written comment or has participated or in letting us know that they would like to make a public comment during public hearing on the budget.
Very good. So I take it all the information was well presented, well understood at the ELAC and the URDAC meetings. So with that, we will now close the public hearing for the El Rancho's budget for 21-22. Thank you. Guess what? Before 8 o'clock, this brings us to item 7. I see your smile, Ms. Mejia. Everybody, I need a motion on 7 to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Mejia. I'll second that. We're going to stay on time, I promise. We're going to try very hard. I see everybody smiling. I don't see this faces of fatigue. So, all right. I have a first and a second. I believe there's no discussion of sorts. So I will now call this for a vote. Ms. Castillo?
Yes.
Ms. Mejia?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
And Merino, yes, 4-0 to adjourn our meeting. Thank you again, everyone, for all the work that you put behind. It just helped us to conclude this meeting in a very timely manner. Have a good evening until we meet again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Dr. Marino?